In this lesson, I'll show you how to sculpt your own objects from scratch, which will come in handy because Cuthbert's having a meltdown. Again. Fortunately, we can use the tools in sculpt mode to help get Connie to Cuthbert and escort him to safety. Go to the assembly menu, press the square button to open it if it's closed, and select the modes menu with the X button. Select Sculpt Mode with X. Its icon has some 3D shapes on it. Every time you enter Sculpt Mode from the Modes menu, a new sculpture will be created. You'll also notice that when you're in Sculpt Mode, everything outside the sculpture will be blurred and grayed out. This is to help you focus on what you're creating. You can adjust visual feedback in your preferences, which you can find in the Options menu. When you first enter Sculpt Mode, the Shapes menu will open automatically and the Smear Shape tool will be equipped to your imp. Try smearing a shape now by holding R2 and moving your imp around. It's great for making organic forms. Now that's out of your system, undo all of it by using the left directional button. By using this tool, we'll help Connie get across the first gap. Move your view a bit closer to the action, looking side on at the space between the platforms. Make sure you can see the platforms and that your imp can reach them. We want to build an organic structure for Connie to walk on, so let's pick an appropriate shape. Select one from the Shapes menu, and you'll see it on the end of your imp. Use the up and down directional buttons to scale it to an appropriate size. While you have a shape on your imp, you can use the grab cam to zoom in and out. Just hold R1 and use the left stick. Now position your imp next to the platform on one side of the gap. Then hold down R2 and use the motion sensor function or the left stick to smear your shape in the gap so that Connie can walk on it. If you want to have another go at it, just undo using the left directional button. Feel free to press and let go of R2 as many times as you want. Each press will create a new edit within your sculpture. Bear in mind that all the edits you make are part of a single sculpture, even if they aren't connected. This means that in assembly mode, they'll behave like a single object. Why not try out different shapes to see what works best? Try holding L2 as you sculpt and use the left and right sticks to rotate the shape. Maybe try making something like a rock formation or a tree trunk. The cool thing is, sculpts are automatically physical, so they can be walked on by puppets like Connie immediately. When you want to try it out, switch to play mode in the options menu and get Connie to walk around on your sculpture. When you're happy to move on, go back to edit mode and proceed to the next step. What happens when we want to edit an existing sculpture rather than start a new one? Let's investigate. When we went into play mode, we were taken out of sculpt mode. When you're in assembly mode, scope back into your sculpture. Hover over it with your imp, hold L1 and press X. It's just like scoping into a group. Have a go at it now. Now we're here, let's try editing the shapes you've already made. To move or rotate shapes, unequip the Smear Shape tool by pressing circle. This automatically equips the Move tool. You might notice most of the movement controls in sculpt mode are the same as in assembly mode. Grab and move shapes with R2, rotate them using L2 and the sticks or the touchpad. You can hold L1 and move with R2 to clone your shapes or scale them with the up and down buttons. You can even repeat clone. But unlike assembly mode, you can't select things with X in sculpt mode. Now try moving, rotating, and scaling your individual shapes. If you want to smear some shapes again, just go to the Sculpt Tools menu and select the Smear Shape tool. The icon is a row of intersecting squares. Now you can play around at sculpting with different shapes. Don't forget that you can undo and redo at any time. If you accidentally scope out, you can scope back into your sculpture by hovering over it with your imp and pressing L1 and X. In the next step, I'll show you how to colour your sculpture. You've probably noticed by now that all your sculptures are orangey brown, like clay. That's the default colour, but you can sculpt with any colour you like. If you're in assembly mode, hover over your sculpture with your imp, then hold L1 and press X to scope back into it. Next, head to the Colours section in the Sculpt menu and press X over a colour group to see the different shades. Choose a colour, any one you like. And as if by magic, the shape on your imp is now the colour you chose. Any new shapes you make will be that colour, but the old shapes are still brown. Luckily, we can also colour shapes after we've created them, using the Spray Paint tool. Go to the Sculpt menu and open the Tools section with X. Then select the Spray Paint tool, which has a spray can icon. Now your imp will have an outline of the current shape on its tip. Intersect the shape with your sculpture and you'll see the spray paint colour appear on it. Hold R2 to apply the spray paint to the shapes. You can try out different colours and shapes to completely change the look of your sculpture. If you want to make it easier to keep your imp on the surface of the sculpture, you can use the Surface Snap guide. You can find Surface Snap in the Sculpt Guides menu. Select it with X to turn it on. There's a Guides menu in every mode, though not all guides are available everywhere. You can also change the finish of your sculpture using the Finishes menu. The Coat, Style and Effects tutorial has more on finishes if you're curious. By now, you should have an organic-looking form, and it will be whatever colour your imagination conjured up. If you switched on Surface Snap, switch it off in the Guides menu before continuing. Just select the button with X to turn it off. Then, when you're ready, proceed to the next step. All these smeared shapes are creating one single sculpture, even if there's space between them. But you can also use the smear tool to remove from the sculpture instead of adding to it. To do that, we need to make the tool subtractive. Scope into your sculpture if you haven't already with L1 and X. When the Smear Shape tool is equipped to your imp, you can press triangle to make it subtractive. You'll notice that your imp turns into an outline. The shape on your imp becomes an outline too. You can now use the Smear tool to cut into your sculpture. Try using different shapes to see what effect they have. For a really cool effect, try subtracting with a different coloured shape on your imp. How good is that? You can switch the tool between additive and subtractive by pressing triangle. Why not play around with the tools a bit and try to make a dramatic or interesting looking form? When you're happy with its shape, go into play mode and see if you can get Connie across it. If you need to edit it, just come back to edit mode via the options menu. Don't forget to scope back into your sculpture using L1 and X. When Connie has successfully crossed the first gap in play mode, switch back. Smearing shapes can be a messy business. Sometimes you just want to create neat sculptures. Luckily, there are ways to do that. So go to the Assembly menu and select Sculpt in the Modes menu. This will create a new sculpture. Now let's practice sculpting an architectural structure over the second gap. To help us build a neater bridge, open the Guides section of the Sculpt menu. In Guides, switch on Grid Snap by pressing X over it. You'll see a number appear next to the button. That's how big the grid squares will be. You'll notice the white dotted grid in the scene. The spacing of the dots shows the tightness of the grid. They will change orientation depending on your point of view. We'll leave it on the default setting for now. You can experiment with it later. Now try making a colourful sculpture using the Smear and Move tools and the Colours menu. This'll just be a practice one, so don't spend too long on it. We'll delete it and make an even better one in a minute. You'll notice that it's much easier to keep your shapes neat and straight this time. That's because Grid Snap is active. It makes your tools and objects snap to the grid. It also helps you rotate precisely. Try it out using L2 or the touchpad. With Grid Snap on, objects rotate 45 degrees at a time. You can rotate the shape on the end of your imp before you stamp it, or use the Move tool to rotate shapes that are already placed. When you're comfortable sculpting with Grid Snap, continue to the next step. If we want to make a super neat bridge, there's another guide we can use. If you're still in sculpt mode, scope out of it with L1 and circle. Once you're in assembly mode, delete your sculpture with triangle. Go to the Modes menu. Click the Sculpt Mode button to start a new sculpture. Now we're in sculpt mode, the Guides menu will have different options. Open the Guides menu and switch on the Mirror Guide. Don't worry about the 2 additional options. Let's investigate them later. Also, check the Grid Snap is still turned on. Now select the Smear tool in your chosen color and shape. The Mirror Guide will always center on the first shape you make. That's why we started a new sculpture. Now, move your view so you can see all of the second gap, and your imp can reach it. If you need to, use the grab cam to zoom out a little from the shape on your imp. Now stamp your first shape right in the center of the gap to enable the Mirror Guide. Then smear your shape from the center over to the edge of the gap where it meets the platform. You'll see that your sculpt is mirrored, so you only have to make half of the bridge, and it'll be nice and symmetrical, leaving you to focus on making it fabulous. Carry on sculpting and carving your bridge until you're happy. Test it in play mode. And when Connie is over the second gap, return to edit mode via the options menu. When you're back in edit mode, switch off the Mirror Guide. You can also switch off Grid Snap if you want, before moving on to the next step. Now we need to create a bridge across the last gap. For that, we're going to use the mighty Stamp tool. First, we'll need to create a new sculpture by going to Sculpt mode via the Modes menu. Now that you're in Sculpt mode, make sure you've switched off the Mirror Guide before you continue. You'll be equipped with the Smear Shape tool by default, so you'll need to switch to the Stamp Shape tool. You can find Stamp Shape in the Sculpt Mode Tools menu, next to Smear Shape. Its icon is a simple square. You can quickly switch between the Stamp and Smear tools using L1 and Triangle. It's a bit like switching between additive and subtractive, but with L1 held down. Stamping shapes is a bit like stamping objects from the Dreamiverse. With the Stamp Shape tool, you only stamp one shape at a time, no matter how long you hold R2 or X. This has additional benefits too, which you'll see later. Now select the cube in the Shapes menu, then stamp one at the side of the gap. We're almost there, Connie! Open the Sculpt Tools menu again, and this time pick the Stretch tool. Its icon is a double-ended arrow. When stretch is selected, hovering your imp over a shape will cause an arrow gizmo to appear. Hover over the side of the cube that's facing the opposite platform. Press and hold R2 when the arrow is showing, and use your imp to stretch the shape across the gap. Nice. Let go of R2 when you're done stretching. It's not a very exciting bridge right now, but I've got something great to customize it with soon. You can stretch any shape you've sculpted, regardless of what shape it is. Spheres, cones, and even donuts can be stretched. You can even stretch subtractive shapes, but only at the points where they intersect with the sculpture. Have some fun with the stretch tool, but don't go to play mode just yet. When you're ready to take this bridge and your sculpting skills to the next level, continue to the final step. So far, I've shown you a few ways to edit the shapes you've already sculpted. But there's also a way to edit the shape before stamping or smearing. First of all, make sure you're still scoped into the sculpture. If not, hover over the bridge, hold L1 and press X to scope in. Also, make sure that you're using the stamp shape tool and not the smear shape. Next, choose a shape from the Shapes menu and select what color you want it to be. Now move the new shape right next to the bridge so that they're touching. Use the grab cam to make sure the shape is in contact with your bridge. Now hold L1 and press square to open the shape editor, just like when you want to tweak something. When you're in the shape editor, you can let go of L1 and the shape will be fixed in place while editing. Notice the Sculpt menu has been replaced with the Shape Editor menu. The buttons vary a little depending on which tool and shape you're using. The Shape Editor for the Stamp tool has quite a few options. We're only interested in one for now, the most exciting one: Soft Blend. The icon is the one with the two circles blending together. If the option isn't there, just check that you have the Stamp Shape tool equipped and not Smear Shape. This is important. Next to the icon, there's a slider and a toggle button. Sliders in the Shape Editor are round, which may seem unusual, but they work just like the sliders in tweak menus. The Blend Amount slider affects how much the shape will blend with other shapes nearby. Try holding X on the slider and moving your imp up and down. This is how you get some truly amazing shapes. The Hard Blend toggle switches between hard and soft blends. Toggle between the two options with X to see the difference it makes. To close the shape editor, just press Circle. Now have a play with your blendable shape. You can only blend shapes that are part of the same sculpture. So if you can't see any blending on your shape, scope into the sculpture with L1 and X. You can make some very cool shapes using blending. Try making subtractive blends too. Experiment with different shapes and blends on your bridge. Make it really fancy. You can jump back into the shape editor with L1 and square. You can use the shape editor in any of the sculpting tools. Try using soft blend with the spray paint tool. To exit the shape editor and return to sculpting, just press circle. When you've got the hang of the shape editor and you're happy with your bridge, try it out in play mode and get Connie to Cuthbert. Take Connie through the door to finish the tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll master paint mode. Uh-oh. Looks like Connie's having a bad day. Cuthbert got a bit handy with the lawnmower and mucked up her garden. Sorry, Connie. Let's paint her a lovely new one in paint mode. So, to explain, everything you see in dreams is made up of little splats called flecks. They can be big, loose and painterly, or small, tight and smooth. In paint mode, we deal with strokes, like real-life painting. Strokes are lines of flecks that you draw in 3D space using your imp. Let's make some now. Go to the Assembly menu. If it's closed, just press the square button to open it. Then open the Modes menu with X. It's this little group of icons. In the Modes menu, select Paint Mode. It has an icon with a paint squiggle. When you enter Paint Mode, you'll go straight into the Flex menu. And the Brush Flex tool will be equipped to your imp. See? There's a fleck on the tip of your imp. When you're painting, Everything else goes blurry and black and white to help you focus on what you're creating. You can adjust the visual feedback in your preferences, which you can find in the Options menu. Try pressing and holding R2 while you move your imp around. And look at that! You're painting. Your imp creates a paint stroke made of a trail of flecks. Try changing how hard you press R2 as you paint. With the brush fleck tool, changing the pressure on R2 affects how opaque the flecks are. So if you press R2 lightly, the flecks will be more transparent. Now press square to open the paint menu so that we can look at some new colours and finishes. Look at the top row of buttons in the paint menu to find them. As well as the flex menu, which is already open, there are also menus for colours and finishes there. You can use these to change the colour and finish of your flecks. Practice with the brush flex tool and make as many strokes as you like. You can always undo any mistakes with the left directional button. Once you've got a feel for painting, continue to the next step. Was that fun? Now that you've made a gorgeous painting, hold L1 and press circle to scope out of paint mode. It's just like scoping out of a group and works the same way for all creation modes. A painting is a single object created in paint mode, just like a sculpture is a single object created in sculpt mode. In assembly mode, you can move, scale, and rotate your painting. To edit the strokes in the painting, you can scope into it, just like you can with a group. Try scoping into the painting you just made. Hover over it, hold L1, then press X to scope in. When you scope into a painting, you will automatically be put back into paint mode and equipped with the brush fleck tool. Press circle to unequip the brush fleck tool. Now you can use the Move tool on the individual strokes in the painting. You can scope out of the painting again with L1 and circle. Do you fancy making some flowers for Connie's garden? Connie loves flowers. Let's start by making a leaf, and then we can work our way up to the petals. Delete your practice painting using triangle. Then enter paint mode in the Modes menu. Choose a colour and a finish from the paint menu. Then choose a fleck to paint with. Use the up and down directional buttons to adjust the size of the fleck. Now paint a simple stroke. Remember, the harder you press, the more opaque the flecks will be. If you want to take another shot at it, just undo with the left directional button and try again. When you're happy with your leaf, go to the next step. Next, let's paint a stalk. In the context menu, you'll see a button with a plus sign icon. Select this button to start a new painting. For the stalk, we'll use the Drawflex tool. Open the Paint menu with Square if it's closed, then select the Tools menu. The Drawflex tool icon is a pencil. Select it with X. Drawflex acts more like a pen than a paintbrush. The harder you press R2, the larger the stroke gets. So if you press gently, the stroke will be quite small. When you scale the Drawflex tool, the fleck will get much bigger. That's because it's showing you the maximum size of the fleck. When you stop scaling, it reverts back to the smallest size the fleck can be. Try drawing a flower stalk with it. Have a few goes to practice. Adjust the pressure on R2 as you paint the stroke, so that the stalk tapers at the end. Don't worry about lining it up with the leaf though. We'll do that later. When you're happy with your stalk, continue to the next step. Now the exciting bit, the flower. In the context menu, select the Start New Painting button. By starting a new painting, the flower will be a separate object to the stalk. We're going to paint the petals with the Stamp Flex tool, plus a special ingredient. You can find Stamp Flex in the Paint Mode Tools menu. Select it with X, then choose a fleck, colour and finish for your flower's petals. Now for that special ingredient, the Kaleidoscope Guide. You can find Kaleidoscope in the Guides menu, which is in the top row of the Paint menu. The kaleidoscope icon looks like a snowflake. Select it with X to turn it on. Leave the settings as they are for now. You can experiment with them later. You'll now have a clump of 5 flecks on your imp. Stamp the clump in your scene. That will set the center of the kaleidoscope. There will now be 1 fleck on your imp and 4 others floating around the center point. Whatever you do with the fleck on your imp will be mirrored by the other 4. You might need to adjust your position to get a good view. You could also try rotating the fleck on your imp. To do that, hold L2 and use the sticks, or stroke the touchpad. You can use the up and down directional buttons to scale the flecks. Whatever you do, make a flower you like the look of. If you mess up, you can just undo it with the left directional button and try again. Add as many petals as you like. Try using different colours and sizes. You could also try using the other painting techniques you've learned. If you want to delete parts of the bloom, Just unequip the Stamp Flex tool by pressing circle. Then use triangle to delete any parts you don't like. If you delete the first flex you stamped, the kaleidoscope guide will still be centered on their position. With the Move tool equipped, you can also move or even clone parts of the painting. Flex created with the kaleidoscope guide will always behave like a kaleidoscope, even when the guide is turned off. Go ahead and experiment. Then, when you're happy, proceed to the next step. Now we've finished painting, unequip the Stamp Flex tool with circle. And if it's still on, turn off kaleidoscope in the guides menu too. Scope out of the painting by holding L1 and pressing circle. Now you can assemble the parts of the flower using the Move tool. Beautiful. Let's group the flower so it's a single object. Select all of the flower parts with X. And now select the Group button in the context menu. There! We've made the flower a single group that we can move, scale, rotate, and clone. I spy some charming plant pots. How about we put the flower in one of them? Now let's make another flower by cloning the first one. So hold L1, then grab the flower with R2 to make a clone. We don't want them all to look identical though. Let's make a different bloom. You can scope into the flower group by holding L1 and pressing X over it. Now delete the bloom from the top of the plant. Let's do something a bit different with this flower. In the next step, I'll show you how to edit the appearance of your flex. So, let's make a beautiful new bloom for this flower. Enter Paint Mode and equip the Stamp Flex tool. To make this bloom look a little different, we're going to edit the flex appearance. We can do that by selecting the Edit Flex button in the context menu. Or use the shortcut. Hold L1 and press square to open the Flex editor. It's the same shortcut as opening a tweak menu. The Flex editor has sliders for altering the appearance of the fleck. They look a bit different to the sliders you see in tweak menus, but they work much the same way. Try dragging them up and down using X and see what they do to the fleck on your imp. To slider, how exciting, much the same. The Fleck editor has sliders for altering the appearance of the fleck. They look a bit different to the sliders you see in tweak menus, but they work much the same way. Try dragging them up and down using X and see what they do to the fleck on your imp. How to slider to edit the fleck. So, let's make a beautiful new bloom for this flower. Enter Paint Mode and equip the Stamp Flex tool. To make this bloom look a little different, we're going to edit the flex appearance. We can do that by selecting the Edit Flex button in the context menu. Or use the shortcut. Hold L1 and press square to open the Flex editor. It's the same shortcut as opening a tweak menu. The Fleck editor has sliders for altering the appearance of the fleck. They look a bit different to the sliders you see in tweak menus, but they work much the same way. Try dragging them up and down using X and see what they do to the fleck on your imp. How exciting! The fade slider adds extra flecks that fade away near the edges. The scatter slider adds extra flecks with impasto to create a more three-dimensional clump of flecks. The opacity slider makes the fleck more transparent. Now we have some new flowers. How about a bit of rain to water them? We can do that by creating an animated stroke. Make sure you're scoped out of any paintings or groups. Then select Paint Mode from the Modes menu. For the rain, we'll use the Rule Flex tool. It's in the Paint Mode Tools menu. The icon looks like a ruler. The Rule Flex tool lets you draw straight lines made of flecks. Choose a fleck, colour and finish for your rain. Something watery. Then close the menu with Square. These flecks are going to be raindrops, so make them small using the down directional button. Move your view back from the flowers so that you can see plenty of space above them. Then position your imp at a reasonable distance above the flowers and press and hold R2. Stretch the stroke down to the grass at a slight angle, then release R2 to stamp it. This line of flecks is going to be the path of the raindrop. Unequip the Rule Flex tool with Circle. Then scope out of your painting using L1 and Circle. It doesn't look like much at the moment, but in the next step, I'll show you how to make it look more To animate the painting, we need to tweak it. So hover your imp over the painting you just made. Hold L1 and press Square to open its tweak menu. Look for the animation page of the tweak menu. The tab has a clapperboard icon. The slider at the top controls the playback speed. Grab the slider with X and pull it to the right. You won't see anything change to start with. In order to see animation, you'll need to start time by clicking R3. Use the grab cam or the sticks to get up close to the stroke, and you'll see the flecks are moving along it. You can increase the playback speed to make them move faster. The next step is to switch on pulse. When pulse is on, you won't see the whole stroke. Instead, a pulse of flecks will travel down it. Select the pulse button in the animation tab of the tweak menu. Its icon is a bomb. Ah yes, that looks much more like a raindrop. You can shorten the trail of the pulse using the slider below the pulse button. Shorten the trail a little to achieve a raindrop look. The drops are still a little on the slow side. Grab the playback speed slider and turn it right up. That's more like it. One raindrop isn't going to water many flowers though. There's a handy way to duplicate your painting without having to clone it loads of times. I'll show you in the next step. So now let's duplicate our raindrop and create a proper downpour. In the tweak menu of the raindrop painting, look for the Duplicates tab. The Duplicates icon is a pair of sheep, just like the clone tool. This tab is used to create duplicates automatically, based on a variety of options. The positional duplicates options determine where the copies appear. The option we want is around camera. Select it and see what happens. Wow! Now it looks like it's really raining. This setting duplicates the painting around the camera automatically, so wherever we go in the scene, it will seem like it's raining. At the bottom of the Duplicates tab are 3 sliders. They affect how many of them there are, how far apart the duplicates are spaced, and whether they are scaled randomly. Try adjusting the sliders and see if you can create an effect you like. Then close the tweak menu using the close button in the corner, or hold L1 and press circle over the tweak menu to close it. Now that we've watered the garden, let's add some finishing touches. Open the assembly menu with square, then select the search button with X. The collection for this tutorial contains lots of great things made in paint mode. There are also more plant pots and a garden shed made in sculpt mode. Use the collection to finish making Connie's garden. Stamp some plants or pots, or paint more plants of your own. Make it lovely. When you're happy with the garden, stamp the shed in there somewhere. To finish the tutorial, switch over to play mode and walk Connie through the door of the shed.